Alright, fuckers and fuckettes. This is and by the way, for y'all that keep thinking it's fuckers and fuckettes. Fuckers and fuckettes, you know, so you're either a fucker if you're male, or you're a fuckhead if you're female. I'm not saying fuckhead, I just talked funny. But anyway, look here. When you're doing these old bikes, and I just noticed this on this one, he's getting some, he's going to bring them when he comes to pick up the bike. These little caps on your intake boots, let me get this thing to where I can see if y'all can see what the fuck I'm showing you here. See when it's loose like that? I can just flip that little motherfucker around. That's a vacuum leak waiting to happen. Now, sometimes you get lucky. I don't have, I have pliers with me. But sometimes you get lucky and you can just squeeze them and move the clamp up. I don't recommend doing that because if they're already brittle enough to where you've got a loose spot, that's a vacuum leak already. And if you do move the clamp up, it's just waiting to happen again. That's all. Go on ahead and put on new boots. I mean, the kid with these, yeah, the boots are a little bit crappy, but you know what? On the inside, they're not cracked one bit and they were not leaking. His leaks were right here. His vacuum leaks. And I'm going to give you a couple other notes on setting up carbs too, because I've been emailing back and forth with a couple of you, and some people don't get it. Now there's supposed to be little plugs in the tops of these carbs over the mixture screws. That's some EPA bullshit. But when you vacuum balance your carbs, you hook up your vacuum testers to here, blah blah blah, all the way across. You run it up to 3 grand, and now generally what I'll do is I'll hook up a vacuum gauge, and sometimes you can get away with running them at 2 grand. I'll just figure out where my vacuum's at and call it good. But 2,500, 3 grand is a safe RPM. And all I do is I just dial my idle up. Now, these mixture screws, when you set these, what the book tells you, you know, whether it be 1 3/4 turns or 2.5 turns, I don't give a shit. What the book tells you is just a general guideline to get the bike up and running close to peak, okay? The correct way to set them up is to use an EGT, exhaust gas temperature sensor, on each cylinder, but a lot of people can't afford that. But what you can afford, let me grab this sumbitch and show you. What you can afford is one of these infrared thermometers. Now I aim it at the first bend in each pipe, and I set my temperature. I run the bike, I come back in. Now this is after I've synced my carbs. I run the bike, I come back in, I'm already got my caps out, so I'm ready to adjust my mixtures. At the first bend in each exhaust pipe coming away from the head, I pick about the same spot on each one, and I set them to 175, 180 degrees after the bike has been idling in front of the fan for about 5 minutes at a proper idle. Then, if I've had to move any of these screws more than 1/4 of a turn, I will hook up my carb sticks, and I'll show you the ones I use. Hell, that's all I use. I use the old-fashioned mercury carb sticks. I know guys that use vacuum gauges. I have a set of electronic balancers, but I have not found anything that is more effective or more accurate for balancing a set of carbs than those good old-fashioned mercury carb sticks. And I have, probably 9 of these electronic pieces of shit that they get them close, but they just don't get them quite right. So you do balance them, again, if you've had to turn. Oh, and by the way, I should mention that, you know, the newer bikes, they've pretty much all got these little test ports with the caps. Older Hondas, you can have a screw in the head. and you have to have adapters. I'll show you what the adapters look like. All they do is screw in and place of them screws, and whenever you pull them screws out to balance your carbs, always put in a new brass washer in there. I've got soft aluminum ones on my Goldwing, but that's a personal preference because I'm always messing with those carbs. Now, you can do it with a cylinder head temperature measurement. I just use 170 to 180 as a general rule. I like to keep them about 170, 175. I know that these Yamahas run a little bit hotter. This one actually gets set at 185. And this one actually gets set 3 inches down the tube, which is in the bend on the exhaust. And I am intentionally being vague because I'm trying to give you an idea how to do it. I've thought about this for a long time. But I can't figure out a one kill-all solution. I think what I'm going to do is, as I'm balancing carbs in the future, I'm probably just going to do 3 or 4 styles of sync carb videos. I haven't thought it through. I mean, I've showed you how to wire balance them. That gets them half-ass close. And now some guys will tell you, oh, leave the outside too a little bit less. No, the point of balancing and synchronizing your carbs is to have them balanced, synchronized, all the same. And that doesn't just mean on vacuum. I know that that's what they're teaching in MMI these days. I know that that's what they're teaching in Votech these days. You sync your mixtures too. And if after syncing your mixtures you have turned any of them more than a quarter of a turn, you go back and you check to see did they hold vacuum sync, because they will not always hold vacuum sync if you've turned them that much. And that's how I dial them in if it's a bike that I personally am going to keep or really love, or in this case I just like the bike. I don't love it, but I'm thinking out loud here for you. I hope I'm giving a good enough explanation of how to do this. You don't have to have carb sticks. You can use 4 normal vacuum gauges, or 2 if all you've got is a 2-cylinder. If you got a 1-cylinder, you don't need to sync nothing. Although I would recommend that you at least dial in your mixture temperatures to where you know you have a proper cylinder head temperature. And I've got some fancy shit. Hell, I've got 2 entire aircraft EIS systems with clip-on speed mounts for those sensors. So I can get fancy with stuff if I want to. A problem that I've found with the EIS, the aircraft EIS sensors, is, granted they're in a brand new package. I mean, one of them I bought this year, it was like 22 grand. And yes, I mean this year, January 2013. It takes a minute for that to catch up. These little heat guns here, fuck it, click the trigger, get a temperature. You're right on every time. You know, make sure you're hitting the same spot on each pipe. And don't do it right up against the head. Stay about 3 inches back away from the head. Otherwise, my temperature setting does not work for anyone. If you're right up against the head, it's probably closer to 200 or 300 degrees where you need to be, but unless you've looked up the head, the flow, and the correct cylinder head temperature, I don't recommend doing that. Um, I even have some fancy ones where I can replace the plugs and balance them off my cylinder head temperatures there. You know, the sensors are built into basically a test spark plug with an extra set of leads coming off of it. But the problem with those, again, is like any other aircraft EIS, it takes it a minute or two to catch up, and if you're trying to set up a set of carbs, you don't want to turn, wait, fuck that. Turn, check, turn if necessary, check, you know. And unfortunately, I don't know of an electronic tester that's as accurate as good old, an electronic carb synchronizer that's as accurate as good old-fashioned mercury carb sticks. I've tried, I've got a set that uses this new red liquid, and forget that liquid they give you with them. Fuck, I've been dumping transmission fluid in those and they do a better job and don't bubble. In fact, I'm pretty sure if somebody came by and wanted them, I'd just give them to them. Plain, simple, truthful, honest. That's my opinion of this new red liquid shit carb sticks. They suck doggy doo-doo. But anyway, I think I've explained it good enough. I may not have. I've at least given you a general idea here, I think. And I can't stress enough about these vacuum caps that if they're brittle or if they're old, don't just move the clamps. Replace them, put on fresh clamps. Also, on these newer bikes that have a vacuum petcock, you've always got this stupid fucking line going up to the vacuum petcock. I think the EPA made them put them vacuum petcocks on because they don't trust us. They don't trust us to shut our fuel off, even though gas is expensive and we don't like leaking on the ground. And most of us take really good care of our carbs, and they're not going to leak anyway. But I think that vacuum petcock shit's some EPA bullshit, because it damn sure ain't convenient for anyone, not the end user or the mechanic, either one. Put on a new Corbin clamp if the line's still good. This one's not. I'm replacing the line. I'm replacing the clamps. Anyway, I can't think of any other way to explain that. And when you're setting your idle, these carbs always have an idle adjust. Don't go down here. These are generally your calibration screws, the ones that are right in the linkage. There's always an idle adjust somewhere in the center or on the end or something. Make sure you're really on the idle adjust, please God. I've got a set of carbs up in the cleaner right now where somebody adjusted them by the synchronizer screws. There's a set of gold ring carbs right there. The guy brought in the other day, which I still have to clean, but I haven't gotten to yet. I've got a set of CB450 carbs up in the cleaner that, man, they were bad. And for those of you in California, put those plugs back in, but put in brand new ones. For those of you in the rest of the United States, fuck it, leave the sons of bitches out. There's no point in having them in there anyway. Again, that's some EPA bullshit, and believe it or not, a bike that is properly set up, you've balanced your mixtures and you've vacuum balanced your carbs, you're getting 10 to 15% better fuel mileage. Not just, yeah, okay, 8 to 10% I'd put in writing, just by taking those little steps. And I don't care if you just bought the bike right brand new off the showroom floor. There are very, very few dealers that take the time to set the carbs up right. They slam the shit together, it goes out the fucking door, it starts, that's all they care. Alright, we'll holler at y'all fuckers and fuckettes later, I guess, and Tucker Rocky will sell you those plugs. If they won't, fuck, I'll hand you. I got a bag full of them. Brand new ones, but always put in brand new plugs. Never reuse your plugs. And if you make any burrs or anything when you take them out, well, before you put your carbs in the cleaner, take a Dremel and shave them down, then put your plugs back in. Now that applies for people in California. People in the rest of the states, don't worry about it. Shove you some plugs back in. You get the idea. Well, I'll let y'all fuckers and fuckheads later.